Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Today on the podcast, we've got a jam-packed episode as we welcome Watch Manager Kev Ruane, MBE, to the podcast. Now, Kev actually started out his working life with the British Army Logistics. He was based in Germany, and at the end of the Cold War, his unit was disbanded, and that was the first time he joined the fire service in Germany. Now, we all know how hard it is trying to get recruited in the UK or anywhere in the world, but imagine trying to go through the recruitment process in a different country. He was with the German Fire Service around 4 years, and he was given the Fire Service Achievement Medal, and then he moved back to the UK and began the recruitment process all over again. After lots of persevering, he was entered into South Yorkshire Fire Service, where he re-embraced his teaching of all the experience he gained. He was a fire cadet instructor in Germany, South Yorkshire, and later on in Nottinghamshire, and he was given the Fire Service Youth Training Association role as an interpreter internationally. Now, we're going to go through so many of Kev's achievements today, but in 2012, he was recognised by the Queen herself as he received his MBE. Now, given how he'd had some promotions and his international development had been fantastic, he then started to facilitate people to come across from Germany, France, Holland and Croatia as part of an exchange programme. With all of this international work going on, Kev found himself with so many connections all over the world trying to help different services all over the globe. One of the projects we're going to talk about is the Croatian Wheels project, where he worked with different international fire services to facilitate over 20 fire engines being delivered just in the first time they did it. Now, this is fire services in different parts of the world, starting in Croatia, that didn't have the funding, didn't have the resources, didn't have the ability to equip their personnel with the right equipment. So Kev organised fire service equipment, fire engines, air ladder platforms, PPE, and alongside a massive team, he played a crucial role to get these things driven. They literally drove them all the way to Croatia to serve the personnel and communities out there. It's been such a privilege to have this conversation with Kev today. I know you're going to take some serious value from this one, guys. If you weren't sure what opportunities are out there in the fire service, this is such an eye-opener. Once again, we're sponsored by the wonderful William Wood Watches. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com to check out some beautiful fire service watches. These are made from 100% recycled fire service equipment, once forgotten, now reborn. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com and use code FFP5. Thank you for coming back once again to the Firefighters Podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life to be here with us today. Let's jump on there and get some time with Kev, and I'll see you on the other side. Watch Manager Kev Ruane, MBE. Welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm wonderful, my man. It's fantastic to have you on. When did we first meet each other? How many years ago is it now? I can't really remember.
It's a couple of years ago. I think it was with the British Firefighter Challenge that we met.
Yeah, I remember John Gregory. Yeah, it was. He introduced me, and he was sort of like, "Pete, you need to meet Kev." I said, "Yeah, I've seen Kev. You know, Kev does all the sort of presenting, full of energy." But he's like, "No, you don't know Kev. You know Kev how you think you know him now. Kev is like an ocean." Do you know what I mean? Kev is like the relative cornucopia of fire service knowledge, and this guy is his reputation precedes him most definitely. Because I didn't know you actually started out in the British Army, didn't you?
Yeah. I left school. I grew up in South Yorkshire. Very humble beginnings, very poor family, and the military was seen as a way because it was either go down the coal mines, go work in steelworks, and that isn't what I wanted to do. And I always had a fascination for things military, and I wanted to join the army, and that's what I did.
What was the military fascination? What when you say is it the discipline? Was it the travel? Why? What made you choose that? I know because there was limited choices for recruitment and jobs back then, but what was it about it?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I was into running. Although if you saw me today, you probably wouldn't think so. But as a young kid, I was a really good runner. I was always a good athlete at school, and I liked the opportunities for sport when I was in the army, but also the trade opportunities that it would have given me. And I had some good advice as well from a couple of ex-soldiers who said, don't just join your local regiment, get a trade, do something that you can use when you leave, and don't just see the army as a permanent thing. Look at what's going to come after it.
You know, it was seen as a sort of get your trade, do your travel, and so was always a goal to go on and do something else after it.
Well, it wasn't originally, but all the guys that I spoke to who were ex-military said you need to think of it like that. Okay. Think of it as a great foundation for the rest of your life, and use it and get whatever you can out of it. And that was really good advice. So
where did it take you? What sort of places did you go? Because back then, I mean, still we see a lot of international travel with our military now, but where did you get to go as part of your service?
Well, obviously I was based in the UK for a bit of my initial career, and then the British Army had a lot of troops back then because the Cold War was still a really hot subject. You know, The Russian Bear was still in Eastern Germany. You know?
I love that. What a great name!
And I mean, the British Army alone had more soldiers in Germany than it does in the whole of the British Army today. We had over 80,000 soldiers out there.
80,000 soldiers out in Germany.
Yeah,
gee, that's just unfathomable now, isn't it?
Yeah, and so when I finished my basic training, I thought, you know, I want to travel. So I made some inquiries. And I was told if you volunteered for a field company out in Germany, you will definitely travel and you will definitely get lots of opportunities. So that's what I did, and I got my posting.
So head out to Germany in what would that have been, 82, 81?
Yeah. Well, by the time I got out there, it was April 84. I went out there in April 84. And then from there, well, literally, I went all over the place. I took a secondary trade as a medic. So there were lots of little expeditions going off all over the place, and they always needed a medic. And that turned out to be a really good thing for me. So I got lots of ski trips out of it. I went, a bunch of us crossed the Swiss Alps, and we went walking around Switzerland, Austria, Norway, Denmark, France, literally everywhere.
That's like the dream, isn't it? When people think about back then, you know, what it was like to join the military and travel and experience and get that sort of breadth of worldly knowledge.
Well, and then not only that, back then I was a young kid that grew up on a council estate I didn't have two etnies to rub together, and then suddenly I'm traveling the world. I'd never actually been abroad until I joined the army.
Really?
Yeah, that's how it was growing up. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, you know, and that's how it was. It wasn't that common, you know, as it is today. So suddenly I was given life opportunities. I went down to the Falkland Islands after the war, and I did a lot of work down there, clearing all the little outposts up when he built a new airport down there. But on the way there, you know, got to stop at Ascension Island in the middle of South Atlantic. On the way back, got to stop in Dakar, you know.
So you really got about in the period of time that you were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were in for a good 6, 7 years or so?
Yeah, I left the army. I left as a regular soldier in 87.
Okay.
And then the British Army used to have a thing called the Continental TA, who were all ex-regular soldiers, all based out in Germany, all fluent German speakers. And we kind of were there as a support for the regular soldiers if anything really kicked off.
How easily did you pick up the German language? Because I know I know you're fluent in German, but you do speak a few bits of a few things. You've got that sort of linguistic mind. But you're fluent in German, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I can pass for German.
Let's not speak in German because it will make for a terrible podcast. But nonetheless, it's impressive, and I've heard you do it at some of the competitions. You know, we'll get onto that, and I know we've got so much I want to speak to you about. But you use that even in your day to day now because you've kept these friends from all over the world. Yeah,
my son lives out in Germany as well, and he was born there, so we communicate in German.
Man, that's crazy.
Unless he was in a room and you were, say, for example, in there with us, would speak English. Not to cut you out, but when we communicate just in general conversation, we speak in German.
Jeez, crazy.
So I did French and Spanish as well. I speak a little bit of Croatian. Yeah.
Bonkers. So you finished in 87. You stayed in Germany. How did that unfold after that? Because you were sort of supporting a lot of the regular units, and the Cold War was sort of kicking off around that time. Well, it was still ongoing, and I joined this military unit, the Continental TA. So it was a reserve occupation, and I was doing a bit of a crappy job, if I'm honest, but it paid really well. I was working in the German meat industry for a while, and then
they disbanded us at the end of the Cold War. When the Berlin Wall came down in '89, so not long after that, our unit they didn't need us.
Okay.
And I miss the military camaraderie. I miss that uniform belonging, if you like.
I think we still see a lot of that now because, you know, we get ex-military personnel join the fire service these days, and a lot of them speak about that brotherhood and sisterhood and just feeling part of, you know, not necessarily being in the trenches as such, but feeling that common purpose and the banter and having that, as you say, camaraderie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still close friends with guys I did my basic training with,
Really?
even today, you know, and that's going a long time ago. So, yeah. But I did miss it. And I saw an advert in the local newspaper that they were looking for firefighters in the town where I live. And
so still in Germany?
Yeah. My brother was a firefighter. My brother had been in the Navy. He joined South Yorkshire Fire Service when he left the Navy.
Yep.
And he used to say to me all the time, you would love this. And it never appealed to me, if I'm honest. It was only after I left the military completely that I missed the camaraderie. And he was saying to me, you would love it. And then I thought, you know what, I'll just go down. They had an open day. We go and have a look around and use some of the equipment and just kind of have a show and tell day. And I absolutely loved it. And I thought, yeah, I could do this. And so I applied.
What made you think to stay there and do it though? Because I mean, a lot of people, if they'd left the military, but they still were attached to it in a way, with obviously your continental TA side, but then you would completely left, but you still chose to stay in Germany and try and go for it for another full career there.
Well, what happened is it was a lady.
Here we go. Isn't it always?
I was going out with a German girl. And I was kind of really engrossed in their way of life. You know, she was the reason I ended up learning to speak German.
They can have a funny motivation, can't they?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's really interesting to start speaking if a pretty girl wants to speak to you, or boy, I suppose.
Well, it kind of just how it was, and I mean, I started getting involved. I mean, when I was down the Falklands, there wasn't a lot to do at the time. One of my mates used to play darts a lot. He was in competitions, and he fetched a dartboard and some darts with him. I was playing darts, and when I moved back to Germany to my unit after I came back from the Falklands, I found out this girl's brother played in a pub team. So I had a game with him, and he said, "Why don't you join our team?" And before you know it, I'm engrossing in German bars with this purely German people there, and it's a real motivation. Then when you make a little bit of an effort, you start learning. It starts to snowball.
You pick it up
really
fast.
Quickly.
Yeah. So you went for the Have a Go Day, or as the German version as it was.
Yeah.
Well, that was it town of Halle, was it? I can't remember. I think we spoke about it the other day.
Halle in Westfalen.
I knew I'd say it wrong.
Kind of Halle in Westfalen. Yeah, it's the state of Westphalia.
So what were the sort of entry requirements over there? What did you have to do?
It was basically, obviously, you got a medical. For any firefighting role, you've got a medical. But it was quite simple to pass, if I'm honest. You had a good command of German language in word and be able to read and write it. There were written tests and there were some practical tests, but the practical tests really, for anybody who's been in the army, were just so easy to complete. It's just not really a big test, if I'm honest.
How did you find, coming from a military background and sort of you were already there as the British military guy, how was that with everybody? Because I suppose there was all sorts of people applying. Yeah,
there were lots of, and I was the first foreigner to ever apply for their brigade as well, and it was a different time. Yeah, it was a very different time. You know, I mean, we talk about diversity and things like that these days, and it's quite acceptable that we understand that people come from different cultures, different backgrounds. But the British military, you can imagine 80,000 soldiers living in a foreign country with lots of money in their hand. We contributed quite a substantial amount to the local brewery culture.
Oh, yeah. I bet they caused some damage sometimes as well, bless them.
Yeah, and that reputation preceded me when I applied. And
all right. So you were the drunken military guy trying to come into our fire service?
As far as they're concerned, yeah. As far as they were concerned, I was. Okay. There was a lot of barriers. A lot of officers didn't want me to join.
Oh, I bet that just spurred you. I know you love a barrier, though.
Yeah.
How big is it? Oh, yeah, stand back. You watch me nail through this one. You watch.
Well, what happened, there was one particular officer who I actually overheard him talking. He had a row with some of the officers and said, look, this guy lives in our community. He's done, and the thing as well, you have to bear in mind, a lot of guys wanted to join the fire service because Germany still had compulsory national service in the military. Okay. And if you became a firefighter, you didn't have to do military service. So they used to get a lot of draft dodging.
Okay.
So as far as he was concerned, I'd done my time in the military and I'd done a lot more than most of German guys had done.
Yeah.
I lived in that community. He said he wants to contribute to our community. Why would we not have him? He's going to pass the test. He's a disciplined guy. And he stood my ground. And I really liked that. And then afterwards he said to me, don't you dare let me down.
Yeah. I'll stick my neck out here. Don't blow this, Kev.
I'll put my neck on the line for you.
So you were like the first foreigner, I suppose, in that brigade, for want of a better description.
I was the first foreign national to ever join their brigade. And then when I went on my recruits course, I got a lot of stick from other recruits as well.
Oh, okay.
You know, as a foreign trainee, they kind of expect you to behave as they picture you to behave.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do that. And I almost felt indebted to this guy who stood up for me. And he said, don't let me down. So I didn't. And I worked really, really hard. I studied every night. You know, I made sure I was good at what I needed to do. Even the simple things, I practice. And I got best recruit.
You got the best recruit?
Yeah, I got best recruit on my recruit course. And that kind of
that really rubbed them the wrong way out there.
Up.
Do you know what, though? It's not lovely to have that from like you say, from instructing staff that just recognise that level of commitment, because it shouldn't matter. Like you said, it shouldn't matter who the person is or where they're from or anything like that. If you're willing to put in that level of commitment and consistency and really, really, you know, absorb and immerse yourself in those disciplines and what they want to teach you, that's the same for anybody.
Yeah. So
best recruit, first foreigner, best recruit.
Yeah.
Any more targets on the back?
Well, yeah, it silenced the naysayers quite a lot, if I'm honest. It really did. Because it was like, maybe we got this guy wrong. And my old gaffer, Rudy Barker, he was like, told you, give him a chance. He'll not let us down.
Good man.
And I didn't. And, you know, and I thrived on it. I really enjoyed it. I loved it.
So you stopped, you moved through that. And how long did you serve in the German fire service? And now I suppose you spent a lot of time in the UK as well. What are some of the big differences?
Oh, well, I mean, the German fire service is predominantly made of volunteer firefighters.
Oh, really?
Do it free of charge, yeah. So about 95% of the German fire service are all volunteers.
Wow.
Yeah, and they do it all on their own time. They do it unpaid. That's incidents, training, the lots. They do it all. So because of that, they don't have a big wage bill. So the budget for the fire service is a lot greater. So they'll have a lot more vehicles, a lot more equipment. It's all modern, it's all up to date, because they've got more finances available for it.
Yeah, they're not paying. Staff's always the big cost, isn't it?
Yeah. So, they've got a lot of equipment.
Really?
These guys are heart and soul firefighters. You know, some of the best firefighters I've ever worked with have been volunteers in Germany.
Really?
Their commitment is second to none yet. You go to incidents and the enthusiasm's there. They want to be there. They're doing this for free.
Yeah, you see that a lot with certain on-call and retained stuff over in the UK as well sometimes, because it's not running on funds. A lot of that is running on passion. Yes, people get paid for it, but you know it's not enough to make a living on. And
it's a big life commitment.
It is. It's huge. And we've been over together, I think, before. I've certainly been over with John and stuff to some of the German stuff, and the memorabilia and like you say, the passion. And just the level of dedication and equipment, and just as hosts as well. When we've been over there, it's just incredible how much fire service is embedded in their communities and such a valued role.
It's not just in Germany. If you go anywhere in Europe, be it Western Europe or Eastern Europe, the commitment is phenomenal.
So how long did you serve for?
In Germany, only about it's just about 4.5 years.
4.5 years. Okay.
Yeah, and then I had a midlife crisis to move back to the UK.
A midlife crisis? Crikey. Was a woman really? How were things going with the good lady at that point? Did she had the English charm worn off yet, or?
Oh no! Well, I'd moved on from her and got married at that point to another German girl.
Well played.
Yeah, and she moved back to the UK with me, and yeah, we had a son, and that's who my boys always speak to today. You know, yeah. But moved back to the UK. Yeah, they did. Yeah, moved back in '96, and I applied for literally every fire service in the UK at that time. Tried to get in before I moved over, but that wasn't happening. I think living in a separate country on your application form doesn't look very well.
No.
But I literally tried for every brigade in the country, and that was back in the days when you were writing handwritten applications for everything. There was no email, no electronic stuff.
Really?
But I got accepted for 2 brigades, and one of them was Norfolk, and one of them was South Yorkshire. And because I was living in South Yorkshire, I got a house there. It made total sense to join South Yorkshire. So in September '98, I joined South Yorkshire Fire Service.
Fantastic. So how was it coming back? What were the big changes you saw in, because you'd never been a firefighter in the UK. You went through your basic training and everything in Germany. So what were the differences?
I think culturally there's a lot of difference. I think in a way I expected it to be the same as it was in Germany, and it was very different. We ride around in big red trucks, but I think for a lot of firefighters in the UK, it's more about being a job than it is about a passion.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There are still some that are passionate, and there are lots of people that are passionate about the job, but a lot of them it's a career, and it's not the same. And I did miss that, you know. And I still go back to Germany, to my old fire station pretty much. Well, I've missed 1 year since I left for the Christmas party with the guys, and I still get made really welcome when I go there. And I don't think I'd ever have that same sort of relationship with anywhere else in the UK where I've worked. It's not quite the same. Yeah, when you get there, the number of vehicles that are available and the number of equipment that's available is different. Back then, the UK used to do a lot of improvisation with equipment, which we tend not to do now.
So you moved back, South Yorkshire, settling back into the UK. I know you're not the sort of guy that can sit still for too long, though. So after you'd been back for a little while, you looked at another sort of secondment or exchange or something, yeah?
Yeah, what happened is South Yorkshire used to have a mutual agreement with Nijmegen in Holland and the city of Bochum in Germany. And they used to do mutual exchange programs. And I applied for one. I thought, well, my wife by then and she decided she didn't like living in the UK and went back to Germany. And I was a single guy, got lots of opportunities at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to apply for this. And I was told very early on that there's no point in applying for it because it's a senior officer's role. When I applied for it, I was about 3 years in the UK. So I was just a firefighter. And there were lots of senior ranks going for it. But you could apply, and the exchange was an international study. Okay. And it was studying disaster management. And a firefighter to do that, it was almost like you're not qualified to do that. That was the way it was put to me.
It's kind of like that unspoken thing of you've just, there's no point applying.
Yeah. And people were saying to me on my own watch. Yeah, people were saying to me on my own watch, you're wasting your time. But I'm not one to sit back and let people tell me what I can do and what I can't. It's red rag to a bull, isn't it? Well, I just thought, if it says it's open to anybody, I'm going to prove you that I can at least put a good showing. So, and I knew that the legislation changed on disaster management in Germany after the Cold War. They had a short while, but they did quite a lot of things where they changed the legislation. Okay. So I got in touch with some former colleagues and said, tell me about the legislation changes. And they sent all the stuff over in an envelope to me, all the things that had happened. So I put everything together in a big report. And when I got interviewed, it was almost, they talked down to me in my interview. It's so pathetic when I think back on it. But I got, as they were two senior divisional officers, so area managers now. Yeah. And they were saying to me, oh, you're going to have to work with a computer. And I said, I know how to use a computer. And so you're going to have to, everybody speaks English in Germany and Holland, but how are you going to cope? There's so much you're going to have to know in foreign languages and the equipment's different. So I said, well, I said in the German fire service, I speak fluent German. That's not a problem. And
so you were sort of smiling through gritted teeth here.
Yeah, and this is where you go to Holland. This is, well, I actually speak the local Plattdeutsch, which is a regional dialect, almost like Cornish, if you like. But that's very similar to Dutch. And I said I could get by in Holland with that. I've done that lots of times. And then he says, you have to write a big report. I said, look, I'm going to put your mind at ease here. Have a look at what I've already done for prep work. And I went through a lot of things. And he just looked at it and it was like, okay, have you got any questions? So I came out with this raft of questions and they didn't have answers to any of my questions. And they went, can we have a copy of your question? And I was on night shift that night. And I literally, after parade, I just turned up and then the phone rang and they went, yeah, you're going to Germany.
Oh, man, seriously?
You absolutely aced it. And the guy said, if that had been a promotion interview, I would have promoted you.
Yeah.
You completely shone.
Blew it out of the water. So we're heading back to Germany again. Yeah,
and I worked for the city of Bochum for on and off because it was like go over there for like 6 weeks and then come back and have a bit of leave and then back out there for 6 weeks. and I work with other partner agencies that are out there, blue light agencies, and I did this report. And by the time I finished this report and moved back to the UK, it was just before 9/11.
Oh, really?
So, the report was in massive demand because they wanted to know how they manage things. Everything in the UK was being reviewed again. What happens if something like that happens here? And so for a firefighter, I've not been too bad, really. I've written this report.
I was going to say, for disaster management at a time like that, it's just like serendipitous events right before, such as we remember it, one of the worst terrorist attacks for the UK. So your report must have been bandied about quite a bit. Yeah,
I had lots of copies going out there. And he went to Fire Service College, he went to Home Office, he went to my own brigade. It was shared around other brigades just to look at what other brigades around the country and around Europe were doing.
That must have been great. It must have been quite surreal. Did you have many people reaching out to you questions or asked to go and sort of share it with anybody? Or
I was constantly being phoned up by various brigades who had questions, and I was contacted by the Home Office about a few things about it and just clarification and would I be interested in going back out there if they needed me to, but that never actually happened after that, after I clarified everything that they'd asked me.
Crikey. So you're in this exchange then, you'd headed back over to Germany, having been there once already. Was any changes going back again?
Yeah, because of the city of Bochum, when the station was built, it was the biggest fire station in Europe. Mm-hmm. So, it was amazing, the equipment that they have there. I drove along the front of the station, and I'd seen big stations before, but there were 28 bays on the front of the station.
28?
28 bays. And
man. That just sounds amazing thinking about it.
Yeah, it had at least one appliance behind it, sometimes two. And they backed onto the Opel car factory in Bochum. So they also, if Opel needed last-minute spares to keep production lines going, they would land helicopters at the back of the fire station. So they had an airport tender there as well.
Oh, man.
And they had lots of things as well. But, they still have a thing over there where there's lots, because it was in the rural area, there's lots of Second World War bombs get discovered on a daily basis almost at that time. Right. So we were going to incidents where there were British bombs from the RAF. And there were some interesting conversations around that being a Brit there at that time. I'm sure you can imagine.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So you'd started, you'd midway through this exchange program, but I know you did a lot of work afterwards because you'd obviously seen the value both from the first time joining in Germany, coming back to the UK, and you're quite rare in having such a depth of experience in both sides of the pond. I know you then went on to sort of create this funnel for other firefighters, having found it so valuable to your own development.
Yeah, because of what I did and the people that I was communicating with, and we would often get, it still happens every day in the UK, but you probably don't hear about it that often, but brigades get approached by other firefighters from abroad who want to do learning and development for themselves. And I kind of became like a foreign ambassador, if you like, for the fire service locally. And if anything came up, people would just shove them in my direction. Yeah, so as a result of that, and it really was like that. A simple example, I transferred to Nottinghamshire in 2006, but the chief fire officer of Nottinghamshire, when he had a new deputy came and they were approached by Paraguay about some firefighters who wanted to come over, and the chief sent the deputy to go and have a word with me, and I was just a watch manager. I said, go speak to Kev. And it was one of those things. But back when I was still in South Yorkshire, I got firefighters that wanted to do things, and I was arranging British firefighters to go over to the UK, to go to Germany, because I got contacts there. And then France, I got contact with firefighters from France, Austria, all over the place were coming over.
How do you facilitate an exchange program like that, though? There must be, a lot of boxes to be ticked and people signed off.
There are.
Because I'm sure people would love, I know a few firefighters who have done like year-long sort of detachments or exchanges, and it's not been easy.
It's not easy. And it depends what they're wanting to get. So you can get people that want to come for a month or a couple of weeks. They're the easiest to organise, especially if they're going to sort out their own accommodation.
Yeah.
If you want firefighters who want to sleep on station, then it can become a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Because it's about how we're going to manage it, things like that, or what they're going to want to do. Because if they want to go on to incidents, that's not always easy. If it's a learning development thing, that's good. we had a guy from the city of Grenoble in France who tried all over the UK to try and get an international exchange. And he was a senior officer, sort of kind of group manager level.
Yeah.
He was also a fire protection officer as well. And he wanted to learn about how the British manage fire protection.
Yeah.
So he got in touch, and I facilitated it for him to come for 2 weeks. He stayed with us, and literally we arranged for him to go with the various departments. And departments are generally welcoming of a firefighter coming over.
Yeah.
But you've got to push it to the strategic managers as well. They've got to see the benefit of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the appetite like from services in you? Did you sort of have you go-to services who were open-minded and would appreciate the opportunities with it?
I think it depends on personalities more than anything else. I was very fortunate in Nottinghamshire that the current Chief Fire Officer, John Buckley, and the previous Chief Fire Officer, Frank Swan, were really open-minded to this. Recently, we got contacted. I was literally driving a car, believe it or not, over to Germany. I was contacted by the chief of the city of Aachen, who used to work in Bochum. So that's how we knew each other. And he said, we've got a guy that's currently on secondment to us from Berlin, and he wanted to go over to the UK, and I thought of you. Is there anything you can do? And he's going to become an assistant chief fire officer in Berlin, strategic manager. And I managed to facilitate that where he came over. And as soon as I put it to our strategic management team, they said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, something we could get out of it. And we've got an area manager who's on a strategic management development program now who's looking at going over to Berlin.
So will this actually form part of your role officially?
No.
Or you're doing all this in your spare time?
Yeah. Yeah, it just happens, you know.
God, come on, man. Crikey. Putting us all to shame.
Well, you know, there's no saying. It's not about what you know, it's who you know. And I know people. I really know people.
And I always say, so it's not about your resources, it's your resourcefulness as well. And like you say, if you want it enough, you find a way, you find the person, you improvise, adapt, overcome.
The thing is as well, if you're prepared to ask and prepared to be, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I've always been a bit of a wild lad as a kid, but I know when not to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be an ambassador. And if you represent your country, if you portray a good ambassador image for your country, for your service, when you're doing these things, people like you, people respect you, and they're prepared to put themselves out for you if you're prepared to do something for them in return. And you don't always get it tit for tat. I've had offers from organisations for assistance in projects I've been involved in who have never had anything from me. But they know that I've done it for other people, for other organisations, and they see the benefit. This guy might be of use to us in the future. And it kind of works like that.
And also, if people recognise that you're a doer, if you know what I mean, you actually say you do what you say you're going to do, and if you actually deliver, that's a lot to be said. You know, if you're actually getting it done at the end of the day, that says a massive amount. Because lots of people make lots of noises, but you're one of the few people. You know, you're not too sparing. You know, with your words. If you say something, you're going to do it, and you know you have to put the time in and make that happen for people. Yeah, and there's a. I hope this is okay to say this, but I have an expression. Your integrity is like your virginity. When it's gone forever. I love that. So you have to maintain that. Yeah. Yeah, you have to maintain that. And your integrity goes a long way. Absolutely. If people know you're a man of integrity, they'll do things for you and they'll allow you to push the boundaries a little bit because they know that you're not going to let them down. No, and they know that you come from, like you say, that moral compass is strong. Like you say, your integrity and your own personal resilience to not, blowing it basically. So with your time in you moved to South Yorkshire, wasn't it then? Yeah, I went to South Yorkshire straight. So that was the first UK brigade I worked for. Yeah. Yeah. So when you were in South Yorkshire, I think this is probably the first time that John ever spoke to me in terms of your background, because that was your first. Many people listening to this will know you as the host, the commentator, the master of ceremonies at some of the big fitness games. But your first interaction with that, it wasn't in the early stages necessarily of your career, because that was when you first sort of found out about the firefighter games and fitnesses and stuff, wasn't it? Well, I knew about the World Firefighters Games because I went to an exhibition over in Germany way back in '95, and back in then they were doing some promotions for the World Firefighters Games in Canada in 1996. But I didn't go to that. I was in the process of moving back home. But whilst I was serving in South Yorkshire,
South Yorkshire put in a bid to host the World Firefighters Games in Sheffield.
Wow.
Now, a lot of people think the World Firefighters Games is just like the toughest firefighter or the Firefighter Combat Challenge, but the World Firefighters Games is way, way bigger. It's like the Olympics for the fire service. There are about 30 sports that are always involved, and each host nation has their own sports. So you've got track and field, you've got rugby, you've got football, you've got the toughest firefighter is the blue ribbon event of the games.
Yeah.
But you've also got other things. You've got dragon boat racing, sailing, tug of war.
Crikey.
Yeah, so
that's all part of the World Firefighter Games.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And it was coming to my home city pretty much. So there's no way I was not going to get involved with this.
No,
so
it's got you written all over it.
Yeah, and the guy who was running it at the time, Simon Assey, he was back then he was a station officer. He was a station officer that was running it. And I just went knocking on his door. I want a piece of this. I want to be involved. I'm going to help you. I'm going to impress the pants off you. And he went, come inside my office. So, and then I said, look, I'm connected all over Europe through the fire service.
I'm connected. What a line.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm kind of known. no, yeah, absolutely.
a little bit, yeah. And they said, what do you mean you're connected? I said, well, no, firefighters here, firefighters there. And yeah, I started getting involved with the promotion of the games for Sheffield in 2004. We went all over Europe promoting the games.
How did you get leave for all this sort of stuff?
Well, I was kind of seconded into the team for a short while. So what happened with that, I was part of my role was still operational as a firefighter, but there was certain, I'd take a tour off and have a set where I was working directly for the World Firefighters Games office every now and again, depending on what we were doing and where my role sat into it. So I was doing that. I was getting quite a lot of time to be able to do that from South Yorkshire Fire Service, and they saw the benefit of me doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're going to do it, you got to make it a priority. You've got to give resources to it. Otherwise, because hosting the World Firefighter Games takes a massive amount of commitment.
Yeah, I mean, we had, I think it was about 4,000 competitors from all over the world.
4,000? Crikey. It's like a mini Olympics, isn't it?
It is. It's actually bigger than the Commonwealth Games in terms of competitors. You just don't see the same number of spectators.
Crikey.
So it's a mammoth organisation, mammoth task to organise it all, but really rewarding. Really, really rewarding.
So when you're heading round looking for these people, getting back in contact with some of the old heads and hands, but specifically now on this, Firefighter Games mission, where did that take you?
Well, we did some stuff in France. We did a fair bit in Holland. We purposely put out in things to some of my contacts. We're looking for sports representatives on a local, regional, and national level. We invited them to presentations that basically mostly I did. Simon was with me, but mostly I was doing the presentation purely from the linguistic point of view.
Yeah,
and we got some. I mean, there's a guy from Rotterdam who was absolutely awesome, and he fired up because he was a national sports leader,
right?
And he fired up all the Dutch competitors to get involved. We went to northern Germany to Bremerhaven, went to Hamburg, and we went back to Bochum because I got contacts there.
Yeah,
and the chief of Bochum, he invited a lot of senior managers from all over Germany and sports representatives. And I was introduced to a chap called Armin Tauber, he's sadly no longer with us now.
Yeah.
But he was the group manager in charge of learning and development for Mönchengladbach Fire Service.
Yeah, TFA.
And he introduced the TFA, the toughest firefighter alive competition, to Europe.
I love that.
He fetched the TFA over to Mönchengladbach, and Mönchengladbach have hosted the European Championships pretty much every year in Mönchengladbach, but sometimes they've had it in other locations. So they've had it at Hanover where they do the Interships exhibition, which is the biggest fire service exhibition in the world.
Yeah.
So they've hosted it in Hanover as well before. But
wasn't the TFA the first one you competed in as well?
It was. Well, I actually never. I mean, I've done a fair bit of sports, but I was kind of not really. I was just plodding along and doing my own thing here and there.
Yeah.
And when we were there promoting the games, Armin said to us, "Come back to our competition, and then we'll have all these guys that are taking part in the TFA here. You've got the World Championships in Sheffield. It'd be great if you can promote the games there and we'll get a good team from Germany to come over. So that's what we did. But I went over and two other guys from South Yorkshire went. Simon stayed in the UK at that point. And when we were there, we were invited to take part.
That changes things a little bit.
Yeah, it did. I wasn't prepared for this. I've not trained for it. And it's a beast of a competition.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought, well, there's that old sort of adage, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog that counts. And I was fighting.
Yeah, 100%.
I was really fighting. And I went out and I surprised myself at how well I did.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to go again.
Yeah.
So I did. I signed up for the TFA competition and the World Championships in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And I didn't do bad in that either. I came 10th in my age group in the world.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Right, the life out of me. Yeah.
So you've accidentally stumbled into something that you're actually kind of good at as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was good with my gear. I was fairly fit and fairly strong.
Mm.
And, very determined. And then I thought, right, I'm going to go for this. And I started attending competitions. And really, there was a couple of guys that you'd see from London Fire Brigade. Used to have a chap called John Scudder.
Yes, who, I heard of John.
John's a nice old boy. When he was still serving, he invited a lot of their guys to the competitions, and randomly you'd get London guys turning up. But other than that, it was kind of just me from the UK that was attending these competitions. And then eventually I started inviting other guys to come and join me. And then Chris Trendovich was one of my recruits. I was one of his instructors on his recruits course.
Chris was?
And I just saw this. I saw a lot of me and Chris, a stubborn little machine, and I kind of thought, he'd do good at this. And I invited him along and he took me up on it. And we went out to Mönchengladbach. We flew out there and he loved it. He took to it like a duck to water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was just me and Chris for a while. And then sort of Mickey Joseph turned up.
Oh, Mickey. People will know Mickey. Mickey's, I love that guy. He's constantly injured, bless him. Crikey, man. He can't seem to get a comp under his belt without picking up an injury. I feel for him because he's such a beast.
Yeah, and then next year he invites Rob Budge, and then we just kind of grew and grew and grew, and then John got involved, John Gregory, and I was, at that time, I mean, Chris, bless him, the first time he took part, we were having a discussion before the race, and obviously I've got a lot of years on Chris.
Yeah, because you're so used to being, I mean, that'd be weird. You've got all the experience and stuff, but you're still able to compete and get amongst it with all of them. But I bet they looked at you at like the fatherly, mentory figure of the group.
Yeah, I got nicknamed the Godfather, and it kind of stuck. I still get called Godfather now. But yeah, I was taking the guys to one side and saying, look, these are the techniques. This will just buy you a second here or 2 seconds there. And at first, guys, I mean, like Chris, he was like, you're not going to show me how to do anything. I know my job. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then on the hose drag on the TFA, it's a hell of a long hose drag.
Yeah.
You've got 2 lines of hose. And
I think it's just thicker as well, personally, because it's like the fabric hose, isn't it? It's not like what people think of in the UK now.
Yeah. And it doesn't move very quickly. And then, you're dragging him down there. And I'd warned him about preparing his hose beforehand. And he just looked at me like I was talking Swahili. And then when I was gone before he even connected both hoses up. And I could hear, Christ almighty. And I was gone.
Yeah. Coupling connections. Just get that conditioning. In click. You've got to practice it, 9 or 10 times, especially when you step up. You always see those ones that really get the detail because they spend time. They'll move it an inch to the left, an inch to the right. They'll change the orientation before they pick it up so that it is just bang, seamless. And you can really see the difference, can't you?
Yeah, and then every guy that kind of came along then, they would always say, just have a word with Kev, just go and have a chat with Kev. He'll talk you through how to get yourself ready. And I kind of did become a bit of a father figure for a lot of the guys and sort of helped them out and made sure they were looked after. And I basically from that, we started, inadvertently became team manager for Team GP without realising it.
I was going to say, because you got all these nomad competitors from the UK, and they've all sort of gathered around you in this sort of gravitational pull, and then that's the start of the Team GB, I suppose. And
that's how we started it, and it moved on from that.
So where did the team head to from there? Because you still had the World Firefighter Games to get under your belt and get all that sorted. Well, so you did that with South Yorkshire, but you stayed with it, didn't you? You kept doing supporting it or sort of.
Well, what happened is after we had South Yorkshire, and it was a really successful event, Hong Kong were the next hosts. And because of basically I couldn't afford to go at the time, I just couldn't afford it. I was sort of buying a new house, fixing it up, renovating, and I had to make a choice. I just couldn't go. But I'd got all the contacts. I'd done all the media and marketing stuff for South Yorkshire. I'd got all the internet. I got a database of International Fire Service magazine editors and things like that. So I worked with the Hong Kong Fire Service to promote their games in 2006.
Hong Kong?
And then,
wow.
Yeah. And then off the back of that, Liverpool was the European Capital of Culture in 2008, and they won the bid to host the World Firefighters Games in Liverpool in 2008. So I was approached by Merseyside Fire Service because of my background. Would I assist them? And my old chief, Frank Swan, was really, really supportive and said, absolutely, we'll support this. So I was allowed to go work on and off for Merseyside Fire Service.
How much time have you actually spent on station?
A lot. Trust me.
I know you have.
I was doing my duty and I was doing other things on top. I was doing an awful lot in my own time at home.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there were other events that were going off around the world that they wanted somebody to be there. And the thing was as well, I knew the games.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier if you've got somebody who's enthusiastic because they've taken part, because they know the build-up, they know the background, they know the work that goes into it and all the energy that's behind it.
Yeah.
And you can promote it so much better if you've got somebody that knows it and is enthusiastic. Yeah. They're just telling their story.
It's authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah. And we had guys from Hong Kong that were involved, that came to see us to find out what we did. And then Merseyside came to see us when they took it on. And then off the back of that, literally, it went to South Korea, to the city of Daegu, and I was approached, could I help them?
South Korea? Did you go over?
No, I didn't go to that either.
I was going to say.
Like I was avoiding Asia for some reason. But, it was just the way things were at the time in my life. I couldn't afford to go for one reason or another. And so, but it didn't stop me from getting involved in it.
No, absolutely.
And one really nice story was, it's kind of somebody else's bad luck. I managed to change it into a good news story, but I was at home one morning, the phone started ringing about 3 o'clock in the morning. And basically there was a call. It's from South Korea, and the South Koreans were going over to Eastern Europe. They were flying into Prague, and they wanted to do a promotional tour. They got all this stuff planned. And their translator that they were taking out there had some injury. I think it was a burst appendix, I'm not sure. But he'd literally been taken to hospital, and they didn't have anybody that could work for them as a translator. And they were
3 a.m.
basically.
So for most people, that would be ridiculous. I know, the time difference is stuff. Yeah, I know, but that's just crazy. That is just bonkers. Most people would never think that happened. It's crazy.
Well, what had actually happened is they phoned up Australia first, to the owners of the World Firefighters Games, and said, do you know anybody in the Czech Republic? And the answer to that was no, but we know a guy in the UK who might.
It really is just a global village. Yeah, just ring him. He's over in the UK. He won't mind. He loves this sort of stuff. He's really up for it. Just give him a ring.
So what happened, it's funny enough, I did know somebody who's a girl called Marketa, who's in the Prague Fire Service, and she speaks about 6 different languages, and she'd worked with me on lots of other events for the CTIF, which is the International Association of Fire and Rescue Services.
Yeah.
So she worked with me on other things. So I got in touch with Marketa and said, look, this has come up. It's really urgent. These guys are now going to be in the air. Could you help? And she says, well, you need to speak to my chief. Here's his number. I spoke to their chief. I had met him previously at another international event, but not really knew him that well. But he knew who I was, and we had a conversation. Said, can you allow her to be involved with this? Which she did, and we kind of saved the day between the two of us. So, yeah.
Okay. That's just, for most people listening to that, this comms and like you said, we've said before about the brothers and sisters in the fire service. This is just ping-ponging across the globe. Finding people such as yourself with the resources, with the connections. So that was that the end of your sort of stuff with the World Firefighter. I know you're still connected in ways with it now, but so you had Hong Kong, and then you had the South Korea, Australia.
It went to Australia after that, and Sydney. And I thought, I don't care, hell or high water, I'm going to Australia.
Oh, God, yeah.
Whether I can afford it or not. So I'm going to Australia. And I'd saved up for it. And yeah, so I went to Australia, and I thought, well, if you're going all that way, you need to get your finger out and do some good.
Yeah.
And I really went crazy training. And much to my wife at the time's displeasure, she's a bit afraid of heights, but I booked an apartment in a 20-story tower block on the top floor so I could do stair running training whilst I was out there before the event.
I'm sure it didn't surprise her, to be fair.
Yeah, it went down like a broken lid, I can tell you.
I love stair training. It's not like anything else. It's really hard to simulate it anywhere else unless you've got at least a 4 or 5 story building to really get after it.
Well, the thing was, the stair training and the dummy dragging were the 2 weakest parts of my competition.
Okay.
So I knew I had to work on it, and I didn't have anywhere local that I could work on it. But I was doing lots of things on steppers and cross trainers and dragging weights or what have you. But there's nothing like real training. So as much as I was fit and powerful, I got there early, and I had 2 weeks where I had a holiday before the games, and then I was, for the whole that time, I was doing 3 or 4 times a day where I was going and having a session where I was doing stair running, and I was full fire gear in Australian temperatures.
Acclimatizing, conditioning, all of it.
Yeah. And in the competition itself, it was at the Olympic Village, and they had a hotel, and the stair run was 20 stories, and it was what I'd been training, and it was a hot day, but it was what I'd been training in. So, and it was brilliant, and it paid off. I mean, my aim at that point was to get top 10 in the world in my age group, and I was 11th.
What was your age group then? I'm losing track. So we were 2006 here, aren't we?
No, when it was in Australia, it was 2012.
2012, sorry.
Yeah, so I was in my 40s at the time.
See, most people hear that and they think you're talking about like 20 years ago. To still maintain that level of conditioning, in your 40s, because you're still young in the grand scheme of it. You might not be winning the top comps against all the young lads, but some people feel like they're past it at that age. I love to see you still getting after it. Yeah.
So whilst I was there as well, and that was when the relays had been introduced to the World Firefighters Games for the toughest firefighter.
Yeah.
Before that, relays had only ever happened in Germany. They'd been introduced in Germany in the European Championships, but that was the first year they did the relays. There was up to 40 years old and over 40s. That was just the 2 categories. And so a bunch of friends of mine who we knew, we had an international team for the over 40s. Do you know Opa? Thomas Siai from Germany?
Yeah. I've stayed with him when I was over there.
Yeah.
I love it. His home Thomas is like a fire service homage to everything, isn't it? It's like a blooming church. I love it.
So Opa was there, and Opa's been world champion in his age group before. We had Ray Pratt from Australia, who'd been world champion in his age group. And we got Steve McSweeney from New Zealand, who'd been overall world champion in the TFA.
So it's looking good. It's looking really good.
We were the only team in the world with a combined age of 205 years for the 4 of us.
Wow.
And all the other teams were like 160, 170 maximum combined age. And we've got a lot of Mickey taken, I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
These old duffers turning up when people were saying, let's get Zimmer frames. We won it. We won it. We were world champions.
Again, though, because you talk about the conditioning and the techniques. Do you know what I mean? Fitness is one thing. Yeah, everyone needs a good base level of fitness, but you guys had lived it. You'd seen it, you'd practiced it, you'd familiar with the equipment, and I love to see. I think the whole idea of bringing in the relays brings a whole different dynamic to any competition. I think most firefighters competitions now have brought in some form of a relay, and the energy you get from that. When you see 8 competitors out there on the field picking their strengths, it's a whole different sort of comp then, isn't it?
Well, the thing with it is as well, just at the point where you're getting tired, you hand over to somebody who's fresh.
Yeah.
So it keeps the energy moving forward.
Yeah. And the way they pace through it's massive.
Yeah. One of the really nice stories I've got from this, because I was in Australia waiting for the relay, and I was on the 3rd station with the ladders.
Yeah.
And there's this guy that was stood there, and he was in a couple of heats before me, and I could see him, and he looked really nervous, this Australian fella. So I went up to him and I said, "Hey, all right, mate. Do you want some tips?" He went, "I'll take anything you can offer." So I'm saying, like, make sure you grab the ladder here and not there. I know it could feel awkward, but when you're pitching it, it'll pitch better. You use your body momentum and your speed rather than just holding it in the middle for balance. And when you grab this here, when you're doing this there. And I was just walking him through all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, "Do you want me to give you some encouragement as you're going around?" He went, "Yeah, please." So I said, "How do you want the encouragement? Do you want screaming and bawling, or do you want the quiet whisper in the ear sort of thing? Because everybody's different."
Everybody's different,
and
yeah.
Yeah, and he says, "Yeah, the volume will work for me. He said, don't get too close, otherwise those guys over there won't be happy." And I look over and there's these two guys that are built like barns in suits. They're whispering into the cuff of the sleeve of this suit. I just looked at him and I said, "Who are you?" He shook his head, shook my hand and went, "Tony Abbott, Prime Minister."
What the hell? Oh, man.
He's a volunteer firefighter in his home community. And
You know what? Wow. Where would you hear that nowadays? Oh, man. That is epic.
Yeah. So I'm chasing Tony Abbott around this course. And I'm shouting and bawling at him, and everybody. I'm just thinking, if these heavies see me getting too close to it, but yeah, fair play to him. He got stuck right in there, and
I love that.
shook my hand afterwards. But thank you for it.
I mean, I'm not going to put the chief fire officers in the same level as prime ministers, but I like to see that now as well. You know, when you see some of the comps in the UK, when the chief fire officer of that brigade, whatever's hosting, will at least put it, you know, they'll put in an effort, they'll put in a round. It ain't about winning or losing and stuff like that, but people that are willing to get up there and, you know, they're never willing to ask somebody to do something, not willing to do their self and really, really push themselves. It's important to be ambassadors at that level of the fire service as well.
It is. I mean, last year, I don't know if you noticed, I've forgotten his name now. He was former chief of Hertfordshire, but he's head of the National Fire Chiefs Council.
Yeah, no, I saw him. Yeah,
he took part, and he got chowed along all the whole way.
That means a lot.
It's really good.
You know, it's really inspiring for lots of people in different levels of the service to see that, you know, you're never too good for it. You know, you're never better than it. And that's the beautiful thing about the firefighters games. I don't think anybody cares about ranks or anything when you're at those things, because it's, again, you know, it's that brother and sister aspect to it.
Yeah. So you're right.
When did you get this MBE? Because I don't want us to skip past that.
Sorry. Yeah, that was in 2012. And basically, I've done a lot of international work whilst I was in the German Fire Service, whilst I was in South Yorkshire, whilst I was in Nottinghamshire. I mean, I was doing a lot of youth development work on an international level too, with the CTIF, and that CTIF is the International Association of Fire and Rescue Services. I've done a lot of stuff with that. And my chief, Frank Swan, put me forward for national recognition. And I was awarded an MBE for my international development work.
Man, that's crazy. How did it feel when you got that letter?
Strange. I was shaking like a dog when he's gone to the toilet, mate. Honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've heard people, these so-called celebrities, who say, "I thought it was a gas bill." Honestly, you see the letter. It's come from the Prime Minister's office. Yeah, and you can't mistake that for a gas bill. You can't. And I just literally opened it up and I read the letter that came from the Prime Minister's secretary saying, "We want to put you forward. Would you accept it?" And I thought, hell yeah, I'll accept it.
How often is that invitation going to extend it at the end of the day? Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I mean, the day that I went, I got it in the Queen's Birthday Honours List in the summer of 2012. And the day that I went was in November. I went to Palace. I was very fortunate. It was the Queen that presented it to me.
Crikey. That is bananas.
Yeah. And it's nice to see. I mean, there were a few celebrities there as well. Gary Barlow was there. He got his OBE in the same day. Kate Winslet got a CBE in the same day.
And all of this comes from the humble beginnings, starting in Germany. Yeah,
and just seeing opportunities and going for it, and just putting myself out there sometimes for other people. That. Yeah, I mean, one thing I've always done as well is that because when I was in the German Fire Service, you see a lot of volunteers out there, and I got involved with youth training. I did loads and loads of youth training, training fire cadets, and I've always maintained that.
Yeah.
Wherever possible, I've been involved with youth work because I was a bad boy that came good, as a young lad.
Yeah.
I've been involved, as a young lad growing up, and I just thought somebody helped me by pointing me in the right direction. And I wanted to be that same person, and that's what I did. I got involved with youth training with the fire service. And
I feel like it's like a rite of passage for a lot of firefighters. I know I did a couple of years with some of the cadets in different brigades, and then you sort of run your own week-long course with a few children from the community and stuff like that, and go through your basic hose running. You have miniature ladders and you do knots and lines and stuff like that. And I think things like that. It's really important for all operational personnel at some point in time, whether you're just helping out on a single session, but remembering what that means to your local community. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody that's a cadet is going to go on to be in the fire service, but it only takes one. It only takes one. Do you know what I mean? And it's such an important way for us to demonstrate how much we value investing that time in the community and keeping that love for the fire service alive, really.
Yeah, and I found, some of my past cadets have joined the fire service. Really, I bumped into one a couple of weeks ago, actually. Probably about a couple of months more. But I didn't recognise him. He's grown up now. And he's covered in tattoos. He got like a man ponytail thing going on. And he just walked up to me and went, "How you doing, Kev?" And it took me ages to recognise him. But he wanted to tell me about all his life and all the stuff. And he's just so enthusiastic about, I loved it when we were in cadets. It was brilliant. And you know what? It's a really nice feeling that you've had a positive influence on somebody's life.
Yeah. Talking about your positive influences on people's life, what do you think is, I know we've covered a lot of ground there, and I'm hoping you're going to come back on another episode and we'll go really into how sort of the BFC started and some of the other chapters that you've gone through, because we're just scratching the surface here. But, from what we've covered there, what was one of the proudest moments you think, looking back at that period of your career?
It has to. I said before I was doing a lot of work with the CTIF. Just for anybody who doesn't know what CTIF is, it's like NATO for the fire service. There are, I think now there's at the moment about 38 different countries that are members of it, including the Vatican City Fire Service. Yeah. And they have development committees for various subjects. So forest firefighting, networking of women in the fire service, hazmat forums, things like that. And I was part of the youth organisation group for them. And I worked with two really good guys, actually. A chap called Mick Norton from West Midlands and a chap from Greater Manchester called John Cartwright, both now retired. Yeah. And I was their translator. So I went all over Europe translating for them. And literally, we were doing lots of things with young people. Yeah. And one particular time, we were working in Austria at a little town called Adnet, it's about 10 miles south of Salzburg. Yeah. And it's quite close to the German-Austrian border. This particular day, what normally happened at our meetings is we'd fly out to wherever it was on a Friday morning, sort of very early o'clock. We'd get to where we were having our meetings, usually in the afternoon. We'd have a couple of hours dealing with the business, and then we'd kind of have an early night because Saturday was all day in a conference room. And I was doing running translation the whole time, so business meetings going on, and I'm translating English into German or what have you. And then literally at that point, then at the end of the day, we'd go somewhere, we'd be invited for a meal, and then Sunday you'd fly back to the UK, and then you'd be doing your thing. But at this particular venue, I was introduced to a firefighter, who's a volunteer firefighter in his community, who was also the local mayor, and he told me about a Lancaster bomber that crashed in their community at the end of World War II after attacking Hitler's Alpine retreat at Berchtesgaden. Yeah. And he wanted to have a memorial on the hillside where they crashed. He said he needed some assistance and needed somebody that spoke German and English and to help him out. And would it be of interest? Jesus. Yeah.
Do I need asking twice?
Yeah. So for 2 years, it took 2 years, and it took an awful lot of work. Yeah. And basically, I did a little bit of research with the information that he already knew. And we found out that this Lancaster bomber flew from 619 Squadron, who were known as the Forgotten Squadron. Oh, really? They weren't in existence for a long time. They was in existence such a short time that their squadron crest was never officially presented to them. Oh, no way. If you go to the RAF club in London, where the 619 Squadron crest should have been, for many years there was nothing there. I think they've allowed it to go in there now, but for many, many decades it was never there. And then basically I got in touch with I found out there was a Facebook forum for this squadron. I got in touch with some of the people there, and I managed to get in touch and find out an awful lot about the crew themselves. They were mixed crew, part Canadian, part British. I found out that 4 of them were killed on the raid.
Wow.
And the Canadians who died were the last bomber command casualties of World War II, so it got some historical significance too.
Crikey, there's so many tie-ins there.
Yeah, and then, well, what happened after that is I just got so involved with getting this memorial on this hillside, and we managed to locate lots of parts of the aircraft that were still in possession of locals, where they'd had it in haylofts and barns or things like that. And we made the memorial on the mountainside out of local quarried red marble and metal from the actual Lancaster bomber.
From the actual bomber itself? When it had gone down, people had gathered these bits and you'd... Wow.
Yeah, we just asked, can you donate them? And bless him, the poor old mayor, his garage was full of metal all of a sudden.
It's incredible that people do that, though, to be able to be willing to give up such a really, really important part of perhaps the history of their area and, you know, what it stood for, to create that
One
memorial.
of the really nice things, one of the nice things that came out of that is, I mean, it took 2 years to get it, but we unveiled the memorial 70 years almost to the day after they crashed there.
Oh.
But that whole story came about through fire service cadet work, youth work. So, you know, on Remembrance Sunday, it's quite poignant, this Remembrance Sunday tomorrow, but on Remembrance Sunday, you get the old saying, they shall grow not old as we that are left grow old.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's a reveille, and it's when you go home, tell them us and think of us and tell them that for your tomorrows we gave our today. Yeah. But we got 2 Austrian fire cadets to do that before and after the silence. Wow. And it started with firefighters and kids, but we remembered this crew that crashed there with firefighters and kids. We brought it back to the fire service, and that was a nice way of doing it.
That's an incredible project to be part of, brother.
Yeah, and one of a great thing as well, in that same community, one of the firefighters there, who's a volunteer firefighter in his home community, a chap called Peter Schinnel, but he's also in the Austrian Air Force. He's a colonel, and he's got a lot of connections, so we managed to get the Austrian Air Force to do a flyby. We got the British and Canadian defence attachés to attend. We got the Canadian ambassador to attend. We even had a letter. We even had a letter from Buckingham Palace offering thanks to the community and from the Canadian Prime Minister. And myself and Wolfgang Owl were mentioned in the Canadian Houses of Parliament for it.
What the? And just all that came from, like you say, that it being expressed from a cadet, and you just pursuing it, seeing a purpose behind something like that, and it taking you all the way to that mountainside. Yeah,
and I've still got really close friends out there now. I go back there pretty much every year now. And the thing is, I've met as well, the community, they've done so much out there, and I've stayed close friends with them. But I got another project that I got involved with through connections again through the CTIF, where they've helped us with that, as in the form of an overnight stop. When we take fire engines down to Croatia and we upcycle British fire engines and equipment in former war-torn towns in Croatia, and we've been rebuilding the fire service out there since.
Yeah, I've seen that. It literally is as like basic as it sounds. Some of the stuff that's gone out of service operational use in the UK, you literally drive them down to ferry or whatever, and then drive them all the way across other countries, deliver them, and they adopt them because these people have got nothing out there. And
some of the areas, some of the areas that we've been taking fire engines to, they've had a tractor and a water bowser.
Yeah.
Where
people laugh about that, and think that sort of stuff's happening 50, 60 years ago, but in certain places of the world, that's all they've got, man.
I mean, only a couple of years ago, I got a great colleague that started with me, Grant Smith, and Grant came along purely initially as a mechanic, but he really proved his value very, very quickly. And he pretty much took over the running of the whole thing. And he came as my assistant, but in the end, I ended up pretty much like his assistant, if I'm honest, because he was so enthusiastic, and he was the perfect guy to get involved with it.
Yeah.
But myself and Grant, we did a scoping mission out there, a place that is really close to the former Serbian and Bosnian border areas, and they were really proud to show us that the station had one breathing apparatus set.
What?
Yeah. one breathing apparatus, and that's when you know they've got a tractor pulling a water bowser, that's their fire engine. They've got one breathing apparatus for the whole station. The equipment they're wearing, the PPE that they're wearing, this had been donated by, it had gone out of service in America in the 90s, and they were still wearing it. They were wearing rubber Wellington boots, some of them. Some of them didn't have boots at all.
What? That's just, it's unthinkable now to think that, because if anything, they're more likely to face some of the harrowing things, because obviously their buildings and their societies and the way that things are done over there, they won't have the same, obviously won't have the same fire safety and concerns and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so what happened is I was working with one of these Croatian guys with the international youth work, and he just said to me one day, we've got an old British RS Dennis fire engine from the late 70s, early 80s, and we need some parts for it. Otherwise, we've got no fire engine. But I couldn't get parts in the UK for it. They were just nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And I made some inquiries with my old chief, and I was a bit cheeky, actually, because it was a passing out parade for one of our recruits courses, and he would always talk to the instructors, so I made sure I got him cornered with a coffee and he couldn't go anywhere. I put a coffee in his hand, and then I put a biscuit in his other hand, and he was stuck there left.
Can I ask you a favour?
And then I went, yeah, that is exactly how it went. I just wouldn't mind talking to you about something whilst you've got time to drink your coffee. And he looked at me straight away. He knew he'd been chucked up like a kipper.
Yeah. What do you want, Kev?
Yeah, and basically I said, look, I want a fire engine. I know we've got fire engines that are going out of service. I want to take this fire engine to Croatia. This is why. This is what I do. But the problem is, if I go up through the chain of command, there are too many interference officers who will stop it.
All the noise and the barriers and the hurdles and people that want their names on stuff, it will just get lost.
Yeah. So I went and I said, would you support it? And he said, look, I don't manage fleet management. I've got somebody that does that. He says, I will make inquiries. If we can do it, you have my support. So bless him, Frank Swan, top gaffer. He just said, I will support it. And it was, because it came from the top down,
yes,
and I was the point of contact, it happened. So I was pushing from the bottom, he was pushing from the top, and the transport manager, a chap called Rob Clark, was absolutely fantastic with us. And he worked with us, myself, and then that's when I got Grant Smith on board, and I got another guy called Dave Evans, who was another guy that worked with me as a training instructor. We took the first one over, and we worked with the British military who were doing some work out there, and they said if we could help them with the project, they'd organise all the fuel for the thing, and they had a great relationship with the Channel Tunnel, so we got a free crossing on the Channel Tunnel, we got free diesel for the truck.
Oh, man.
So we did a project with them.
Like you say, if you just go with a good purpose, it's amazing the people that will step up.
Yeah. So we took the first one out there, and then literally the demand for fire engines, could you get another one, could you get another one, grew and grew and grew. And we've ended up, since 2015, we've taken 21 fire engines, we've taken 3 4x4 vehicles, and we've taken a chassis and a cab that used to have an aero ladder platform on it. They have no use for that there. So we took the chassis and cab over and they converted it into a water bowser for water supplies in areas where they don't have much water. And that's in 5 years, 25 vehicles.
Just in 5 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then obviously
Kev,
we get them out there.
Come on. When does it stop?
Yeah. Well, there's more.
I know.
So we always make sure the vehicle's got equipment on them. So we've had winches, we've had hydraulic rescue equipment, and we always train them with equipment. But what we do, we train using their own translators, and then we video film all the training. So we put it on YouTube. So when we leave, they've still got that training ready available as it was presented on the day. And then this year, my former service, Nottinghamshire, they replaced all their fire PPE that were wearing, the clothing. And I managed to, with my colleague Grant, we managed to get over 800 sets of fire kit to take out to Croatia. And we
800 sets of fire kit?
Yeah. And basically, they just paid for the transport. I mean, for them to buy that, it would have cost them an absolute fortune.
Oh,
and we've literally, the northeast of Croatia are now all wearing former Nottinghamshire fire and rescue.
You know what? There'll be so many services hearing that we'll be thinking, you know what? As it's come, I mean, the brigade I'm part of, they're replacing their kit. I think this year, next year, And you have to ask
I
yourself,
can rehome that tomorrow.
I know, mate. You have to ask yourself, what have we been doing with it all this time? Sometimes the manufacturers don't have a purpose for it. Sometimes some of it will get repurposed, but most of it will probably just get thrown away. And you think, look, there's people out there who are willing to make this happen, and there's certainly people that are in desperate need of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to that thing when I worked with the military, they provided the crossing for us, and they provided the fuel for us. And the guys that work with me on, the Croatian Wheels project, we call it, and the guys that work with me on the Croatian Wheels project, we were asked if we'd help them training some Gurkha soldiers that are from Nepal. They were making a lot of Gurkhas redundant, and they were wanting to give them some various practical skills.
Yeah.
And there's a program over in America called the CERT program, which is Community Emergency Response Teams. And they wanted to know if we could train them on the CERT program, which we're more than capable of doing.
Yeah.
And all our team were instructors. So we said, absolutely, we could do that. And that was our buyback from the military. Right. So we went 2 weeks. Yeah, we went 2 weeks out of Folkestone. We trained all these military personnel from Nepal that were in the British military that were going back to Nepal. And we taught them in rescue techniques. We were teaching them to abseil, basically with lines without carabiners and things like that, how to get down rock faces without using carabiners and the normal stuff. We're teaching them lifting techniques because they get a lot of RTCs, road traffic collisions, where vehicles fall down ditches and they've got nothing around there. So we went right back to basics. So you were using simple physics where we would get them to use planks of wood and we'd put them over a brick and do the seesaw effect basically to lift and stabilizing vehicles with rocks. We took it down to that level. And crazily,
principles are the same, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's using what they've got around them. And we managed to acquire some portable pumps, some small portable pumps. And it sounds crazy that in the mountains, they sometimes get issues where when they've had snow and ice in the mountains and it shifts as it starts to thaw, it causes a damming effect. And if you've got a community that's got little wriggly tin huts and things like that they're living in, an inch of water that suddenly comes out of a stream going through their community can cause major upheaval for them. So we were showing them different damming techniques so they could pump away and things like that, how to pull the water so it didn't go into their thing and then pump from there and pump it back into the stream below the natural dam. Yeah. And in 2015, there was a big earthquake in Nepal. And it was really nice to see because they had I saw a news report where they were flying these individuals in, and the local regional commander, he was saying, we've got these experts that have been trained on CERT program, and these are going to be guys, and some of the guys that we trained were actually being helicoptered into these communities to take over and sort things out for them. So it's been
and that's just the international stuff. I mean, I hope in the next few weeks you're going to come on because we've got so much more to go through with even just the sports side of it and how that's developed over time. But it's amazing, and this is exactly why I wanted you on. I want people to see that the fire service is what you want to make it. There's so many opportunities out there, both nationally and internationally, and it's not surprising to hear as you reach across the globe and connect with these different people in different services that those core beliefs and desire to really make a difference for your community or for just people in need is something that's global. And again, it echoes back to, I know you said it before, that sisters and brotherhood that you've found in the fire service. I
always say sisters and brothers from different mothers, and that's what we are.
Yeah.
And 100%. My best advice to any firefighter would be, just because people tell you can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah.
Think outside of the box. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and you can do an awful lot if you use a bit of imagination.
And that's exactly what I hear when I hear some of the stuff we've gone through there, mate. I mean, I know there's so much more to come. Thank you for coming on the podcast today, brother. And I cannot wait for us to head on into chapter 2 next time, because it's going to get tasty. Thank you, Kev. I'll see you soon, brother.
All right. See you then.
Well, there we have it, folks. What a really, really powerful episode. That is just a glimpse into the world of possibilities that lie within the fire service. Don't forget, guys, the fire service exists all over the world, and there's so many opportunities. It's never your resources, it's your resourcefulness. And Kev Ruane is a perfect example of somebody who has really gotten resourceful. He has been driven by his commitment to adding value and purpose to communities all over the world. This has taken him to some incredible places, as you heard in today's episode. Now, Kev will tell you this was not part of some massive big plan. He has gone with the best of intentions and he has delivered the best version of himself in every situation. This has led him on some fantastic adventures. It means so much to me that Kev came on today and shared his story. I know this will not be the last time we hear from him. And I thank you for coming on the Firefighters podcast and listening and spending your time, which we value so much, and listening to another episode. It is our goal to help everybody become head over heels back in love with the emergency services all over the world and appreciate the brave men and women on the front line. Thank you for empowering us to do this. Please share this with somebody, and if you took something special away from it, why not message the page? Head over to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you. This has been the Firefighters podcast, and that was Kev Ruane. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you real soon.